war. Yeah, there was a mistake. Casa Remozo was scared in 1950. And when the public intervention in Southern Italy collapsed in the 1970s, Southern Italy stopped to converge. And it was even a problem then, because it gave the wrong incentives to the society. Passive modernization is also observed in other indicators, such as the per capita years of schooling, where instead there was convergence. But convergence, at least as formally measured, because actually in the actual learning at school, as the PISA test tell us, still there is an observable. That is in the way it is implemented. But formally there is convergence. But convergence took place more strongly. Here, I like with GDP, there was a huge divide. And this was bridged. But it was bridged more strongly, more speedily, after the 1911 law, the Neocredit, which prescribed the transfer of the funding of the public schools from the local towns and the local administration to the central state. Throughout the liberal age, public schools were financed by the local administration, and we have plenty of evidence that the ruling classes of Southern Italy finance less education, even when allowing for the differences in income. Okay? Because they have no interest in financing education. It is the typical modernization of the 19th, but which also involves possible change in the social rankings. In life expectancy, where we say there is full convergence until the last years, except the last years. So we have another case of typical passive modernization process. Here, the ruling classes in Southern Italy have no interest in delaying the modernization coming from abroad, then it came. And so as long as life expectancy was not linked to differences in income, but to differences in the spread of basic infrastructure, of modern medicine, and so on, there was an effective convergence in this dimension, with the exception of the last 20 years when Southern Italy began to fall back again because the health system was established at the regional level. And so it was in Southern Italy, even with considerable resources, much less efficient than in the central level, because it was organized more through nepotistic figures. So, some usually pessimistic conclusions. Convergence due to passive modernization made the economic and social system of Southern Italy more fragile, thus more subject to external shock. This is evident in the crisis of the 1970s, when Southern Italy stopped to converge. And it's evident even today. Today, Italy, in the last 8 years, it did not have economic growth practically, but nonetheless, the divide between the south and the north increased. Is in the present crisis, is Southern Italy that suffered most of this crisis. But another problem is that during the last decades, Italy as a whole was incapable of carrying out active modernization, external modernization in the south. And Europe too, in my view, but is incapable, and maybe also not so much interested in forcing the modernization of this. So Southern Italy has in the present conditions to rely on itself, basically. And in the economic problems of Italy in the last 10 years, which have no precedent in the history of unified Italy, the prevailing mood in the public opinion in southern Italy is that southern Italy is in these conditions because it was exploited by the North. And it's not the right analysis to carry out then the right measures to overcome the situation. Because if you start by saying, but we were exploiting by the North, then the solution is we must receive funds by the North without changing the way these funds are used. And this happened in the history of Italy. This happened in the 1950s and 1960s when more or less it worked a bit. And it happened a lot in the 1970s and 1980s when a lot of funds were transferred to the South. The Southern Italy fell back. So, from the right analysis, that is, Southern Italy must change itself, comes then the basic solution for Southern Italy is that funds must be used in a productive way. And so the logic of the distribution of funds and of power must change in Southern Italy. Then this happened in Italy. I have serious doubt because Italy as a whole is suffering of, this is the economic performance of Italy. In this dismal performance, actually the worst one in the world, excluding Zimbabwe in the first decade of the 21st century, dismal performance is the lack of convergence of the South. So the Italy has a lot of convergence power given his low income, but it does not problem. But there is also a problem of Italy as a system, as a political institutional system, which does no longer work. And we must be aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think after this journey through history, some of the questions that were raised yesterday and remained unanswered have been in part answered, I think the audience will tell us later on. But I've actually also invited Joan Ramon. He's a professor of economic history here at the LSE. And I've asked him to be a sort of discussant to Emanuele's presentation. And also because we want also to touch upon the second part, the European perspective, and we wanted someone non-Italian to discuss on it. So I give you the floor.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I am not Italian, but a bit Italian because I live for longer in Florence. And one of my kids born in Florence. And I don't want, in fact, speak about against LELE because we are many agree. I want to give a much broad vision. How come my broad vision? LELE is one of the members of one team that I co-direct with Nico Bull from Berlin, and we have working about, I think, 6-7 years to make a general picture of regional inequality in Europe. And we have collected, 25 crazy economic historians that are able to produce regional history of every country in Western Europe. And myself, I write the Spanish chapter, I participate in the Swedish one, and I'm writing the French one. It means that more or less, I have a less general vision. I will begin with a word of a former professor of this school and now professor in Oxford, Sir now Anthony Venables, and he said, every person in every country in Europe thinks that his country is very special and is plenty of regional inequality. And this is true. If you look at any country in Europe, I have here a list of famous inequality problems, regional inequality problems. The North-South divide in England, the French desert problem, and Paris is rich and the rest is poor. In Germany, the East-West problem. In Belgium, the most famous Ballon Flamen problem. In Spain, obviously, the Catalonia and Basque Country against the rest, and so on. This means that the Italian problem is not so terrible, it's quite common. It's a kind of European illness. And if you look at every country in Europe, it's unequal. In fact, I was just finishing the introduction of our book. I discovered that the most unequal country in Europe, in regional terms, is not Italy, it's France. Okay, sorry, because it's France. Okay, Italy is only the third. Okay, obviously depends a lot in the measure, but I will take the gene. Okay, what we know about inequality in Europe? What is the general pattern? How? Because comparative history gives the advantage to put the things in perspective. When inequality begins, when growth, and I can connect what make Italy a bit different, and when collapse. Okay, when begin to collapse, and what happened now? Okay. There are two things that are typical in Europe, in every country in Europe, except one, that is Sweden. Inequality grows a lot during the second half of the 19th century until 1930s, 40s, depending, in Portugal is a bit later, but more or less this is the pattern, and decrease during the golden era, the 1960s and 70s, like Italy. In some countries, the decrease arrived until 2000s, in others finished in 1990s, and now it's growing. And later I can come back why now inequality is growing everywhere. And regional inequality now is a huge problem in every country in Europe. And probably the European Union tends to forget, but this is a huge problem already. Okay? The second empirical regularity in Europe is that rankings are very stable. If you are rich at the beginning of the 20th century, you are rich now in your country. If you want examples about Spain, the three richer regions in Spain in the early 20th century are Catalonia, Basque Country, and Madrid, and now the three richer regions are Catalonia, Basque Country, and Madrid. Okay? If you go to England, the rich region in England is the south, and still now is the south. In fact, the ranking is permanent. If you take a ranking correlation, is high everywhere. Okay? For example, in Spain, if you want to hear Spain, in Spain there are only one region that changing the ranking in the last 160 years, that is Andalusia. Andalusia was the third region richer in the middle of the 19th century, and now is one of the poorest. This is the only one in Spain, okay? And if you take Sweden, no region at all, for example, okay? This means that there are this resilience in economic terms of the rankings. This implies that something happened in your history that is a kind of very bad for you, and this remain in the long term, okay? What we know? There are two theories about this. I think that the combination of the two are very good, and obviously any of these theories is about institutions. There are one theory that say the problem is that you need to make the Industrial Revolution. If you don't make the Industrial Revolution, you are in the ranking of lost people. Why you don't make the Industrial Revolution? You cannot make the Industrial Revolution because you have, in economic terms, bad proportion of factors of production. For example, you don't have human capital. And this is bad for you. In the case of Italy, if you compare the north and the south, it's clear that the north has the exact good capital for the Industrial Revolution. It's human capital because it has skills, has artisans and so on. And the south has not because it was mainly a very productive but agricultural society. But you can take any country in Europe and more or less it's the same explanation. Okay? The regions that are mainly agrarian remain agrarian and poor. Even the society changes a lot after 150 years. Even the economy grows a lot, you remain poor. But you never arrive to catching up to the richer regions. Okay? Second theory that is correlated to this is also an historical accident. This industrial revolution happened during the unification of the countries because contrary to the people, for example, Spain, the people think Spain, I remember the Spanish ambassador, I was giving a similar talk with the Spanish ambassador, and he was very offended with me because he said Spain don't really exist until the 19th century. In economic terms, Spain don't exist. It was impossible. The connection between Madrid and Barcelona take 6 days. The prices are not converging. There are internal tariffs. Okay, migration was zero. In fact, the Catalans don't understand to the Spaniards because Catalans speak Catalan, and the Spaniards speak some strange thing that is Castilian. Okay, and this is what happened everywhere in Europe, and we tend to forget that the nation states. Italy is an example, but even Spain, that is supposed that is unified, was created during the 19th century. Europe passed in every European nation, and small,
process of monetary unification. When you have a monetary unification? Krugman has written a very nice book about this. The richer regions, much more competitive, with increasing returns, take all the advantage, take everything, and they get a lot of the benefits. You put together the two things, industrial revolution and monetary unification in every European country, income concentrates in regions, okay? This huge difference peak somewhere in the 1930s, 1920s, depending in the country. This implies that now the regional difference in Europe are less than the 1930s, if you look at every country, and begin to decrease during the golden era. Okay, why the difference decrease? This is a huge question. The main force, one of my colleagues in the department in Learning was declared the most odious person in England, because he said that the only solution for the North is to migrate to London. In fact, he's explaining what happened in the 1950s and 60s. Why Andalusia converged with Catalonia? Because people in Andalusia migrate to Catalonia. The passive modernization is mainly migrations. It's the structural change, and also we have a lot of reference for the states. The change in the south of the states, because the states has the same problem, the United States have the same problem, was this massive migration that made that the economy in the south has to change. You cannot remain agricultural production because the people don't want to work, the salaries are growing, and you should move to this new technology and at some kind of industrialization or change. The problem is that this stopped very rapidly. This only lasts 20, 25 years, okay? Everywhere in Europe, and we have many examples. Okay, this means that at least we learn from Europe the big change in the 1950s and 60s, this passive modernization, is migration from the poor regions to the rich regions that produce huge changes in the poor regions, and obviously much more population in the rich regions and less salaries and a convergence. Mainly in structural production, this means that the south of Italy or the south of Spain or the north of England begin to be much more similar to the rich part. And you have this convergence, okay? Everything stopped more or less in Europe with two things. The first thing is the European Union. We disagree what is what. The European unification is a new force. Second, the oil crisis that in fact killed the European industry. Okay? No longer the European industry is efficient in many parts, and we are back in a process of new tertiary industry. And this is what we are living now. We are living in a new process where concentration is growing, but now the winners are the regions with huge tertiary sectors. If you look at the winners now in Europe, and this is, for example, Edward Glaser was there 2 years ago. I think that he's one of the most, he's working hard about this. Is the big metropolis are winning the war. If you look now in Europe, the richer parts are London, Paris, or the regions that has a kind of metropolis where people has a lot of human capital, a lot of skills, but work in a high-skilled, with high income, tertiary sectors. This implies, and obviously this makes even much more harder. I can imagine, for example, in Spain, Extremadura. What is the future of Extremadura? Nobody is here from Extremadura, because if not, you are offended. Extremadura has low density, is in the middle of nowhere. It's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. If you put the map, I will show you, it's so far from everything. The biggest city of Extremadura is Badajoz, that has 200,000 habitants. Okay, one of the city of Barcelona has 6 times the number of people with tertiary education than all Extremadura together. Okay? And what is the future of Extremadura? He cannot compete. There are not economies of scale. You cannot put you cannot put a design industry in Extremadura or a factory of SEAT to produce cars, because you don't have the skills. You cannot compete, in fact. And Extremadura is impossible to catching up. There are not policies that can change this. Okay, it's difficult. I cannot imagine the European Union saying, okay, Catalans, you should live in Badajoz, because Badajoz needs to grow. I need people with human capital. Okay, and this is something that is very dangerous, because I think that the European politicians don't really understand. Okay, and it will be much more provocative. What happened with the European policy? Because in the middle of this, we have the Italian policy, the Spanish policy, the French policy of development, and we have the European copy of this policy. And we can say, in the long run, it's absolutely fair. Okay, the European policy is mainly we take money from the north of Europe, or Germany, or the north of Spain, or, for example, it's very funny, if you look at the Spanish regions, Catalonia is a net contributor, bigger than Netherlands, and the people don't know. to the European Union, and they take the money and put in the south. What is the effect? Nothing. Why? Because we are using the money for nothing and produce nothing. Because we are, I don't know, if you go to Andalusia or even much more funny, the north of Sweden, you know, north of Sweden is a developing zone according to the European Union. It's a bit funny because the income of north of Sweden is crazy and only live 40,000 people. How to spend the European money? They make an incredible motorway from Stockholm to Luleå and use one car every 2 hours. Okay? Because this is the old Keynesian view. You put motorways and you develop this region. Don't really matter. What is the marginal productivity if you are economists of this motorway? Nothing. Why not to put a lot of motorways, I don't know, in Lund and Malmö in the south, and everything is absolutely collapsing with a lot of people? No, because we want to develop the north, and this is the problem. And this is the same policy during so many years in France. If you want, I can explain every example. France has the same policy, Italy has the same policy, Spain has the same policy, Belgium, and so on, and failed completely. Okay? Why this policy failed? First, because obviously you put something that cannot change the place because they are not demand for the wood. And economic historians, we have a lot of, we discuss about railways in the 19th century, is the same. Second, and this is the most terrible thing, if you give to the money, in fact you are giving money for free. Okay, you are putting money in Andalusia, and obviously you are increasing the GDP of Andalusia people. What happened? All economic historian knows that this increased prices, and everything finishes in prices, because Andalusia is not producing so much output to cover the money. If you adjust for prices, Andalusia probably the price is overinflated by the European contribution at 10%, but it's crazy. And you make no longer competitive this thing. Okay? And this is, if you want, it could be much more pessimistic than Lele thing. We have something that is permanent, that is common in Europe. We don't have, we don't, in fact, I think even the government don't know what policies should address to this. And even if we know how to address this, the policies are very difficult. Probably we should cope with this problem in the next 50 years. And the problem could become worse and worse and worse. And the actual solution don't things to work. And I am sorry, Italy is not so different.
Thank you very much. I think
It's bigger.
It's bigger.
I mean, Southern Italy is bigger than Extremadura or the Northern Italy.
And not Andalusia is 9 million.
well, all of a sudden. Okay. So I mean, I think we had some very provoking reactions and to what was said by Lele. I had prepared actually a couple of questions, but I will be extremely brief therefore. Based also on the comments that we have just heard. So my first question that in part you already answered. How peculiar actually is Southern Italy? And yesterday, Professor Guiso was saying, actually, the South was a problem. It's not a problem anymore because the whole of Italy is also collapsing on a sliding. So actually, during the crisis, the North was the one that was hit the most. And actually, I don't see this divide actually being widening. And the second very brief comment is, are we doomed in a way? The whole so based on the comments that we have just heard, in a way we all say, and in a way you also infer this, is that we need better institutions. There needs to be a better institutional design, but based on what we have just heard, in a way it seems we are doomed, right? This passive modernization, actually it's happening through migration. Actually, we should look for some other sources, not institutions, that really matters, and policy can't do much. I don't know if you can comment on this, and then we open up to the audience.
Thank you. No, of course, Joan is right in many things, and in many very fascinating talk. But the basic point is that Southern Italy is bigger. So, Southern Italy, there are big cities, for example, Naples. Naples is the third city of Italy. So, it is not far from Rome. And so, there is a potential for a development of a part of this of Southern Italy. I would say that other regions of Southern Italy may be doing it, of course, but they are not so much. But at least Naples, the third Italian city, once the first Italian city, the liberal age was the first Italian city. So that could become a smart city, so a dynamic city, but it's not. Then the other southern city, most important, Palermo, is the first Italian city, number 5, after Turin. But Palermo is not Turin, it's not even Bologna, Florence. But it's not a problem, Southern Italy is not entirely a problem of inhabitants of market side, because in some part of Southern Italy there is and there was a market side, as I said. So Naples was a strong area in the liberal age, with the university which was important. And even today there is some human capital in Naples, which can be important. So the fact is that Southern Italy is big. This makes it different from other parts of Western Europe, even from Spain. And then in Spain, effectively, in any case, Andalusia converged.
Not in the last 55 years.
You see the map. The map.
Yeah, but the map is, you know, it depends where you
purchasing
put.
power parities.
Yeah, but the problem is the power parity.
But in any way, the cost of life is lower. And so.
Yeah.
And it converges. So, just a remark about the convergence of southern Italy due to emigration. This is true. Migration, the emigration in the liberal age, the emigration in the golden age. But what happened in southern Italy in the golden age was also industrial investment and industrialization because of state intervention. And I think that this state intervention took place during the golden age also in other areas of Europe, sure in England, probably in Spain, as far as I know.
In France.
And in favor convergence of industry. In the case of southern Italy, of high capital industry in a region which was rich in labor. It could have been an expensive way to develop southern Italy. But that also, and in this sense, I also speak of passive industrialization, passive modification, came also industry. Okay. So it was also a policy, but it was made this way. Of course, now it's much more difficult, I agree with you, but in some areas which are important areas, such as Naples and Bari, maybe Palermo, these few ones, there is still room. No, there is room for economic growth.
Let me actually open up to the floor. So we have a question there.
Yeah, a question for you. How would your suggestions transform into policy side? Would it be that you cut all the fundings for the regions or for the less developed regions and just funnel it into the central metropolis, or how would that look like?
Okay, there are two ways to look at this. One is probably the Swedish way is better. The Swedish way, now the Swedish policy has been by large the best European policy during many years. You know, in Sweden, during the 1950s, the North has an enormous crisis because the North produce wood, and you know, wood is not very competitive because Swedish wages are crazy. And they decided what to make with these people living in the North because they don't have jobs, everybody was unemployed. And they give to the people a subsidy to live in the South and 2 years of salary to be recycled to a new profession. This is the Swedish law. Obviously, this is not very popular because you should win elections in the South. And the people in the South will be not very north. But what is clear is that today's policy is not working. I am not against to make policy. In fact, I like to have policy. I am not the kind of Tory or one extreme liberal. But policy is necessary. But the old style policy that is mainly capital investment is not working. I am sorry, it's not working. Motorways in the south, or I don't know, like in Spain, we have a huge
program to produce universities in every Spanish city. They spend a lot